It's a pleasure to be back here, as always. Many things have gone on over the last decade or so as I've had the chance to over the last 10 years, one of the great things that's happened is that I've been here telling you about XBRL, the Extensible Business Reporting Language, which I've said, at least my vision of it has been that someday a piece of business information, once it enters any computer, anywhere, it never needs to be retyped as it moves into the business reporting supply chain from any source, say between a trading partner and the company itself, as it's used internally for different purposes, operations, management reporting, as it's prepared for external reporting, and then as it moves out and is used by all of the different parties that you see. XBRL came together as an effort to bring together all of these participants in the business reporting supply chain and to have that win-win-win where everybody is benefiting from this as information moves from business operations, the transactional level, where XBRL has explicitly said it does not want to play directly. We don't want to be used for two-way transactions, but we do want to have that seamless interface with the two-way transactions. This space, as you heard from Amy earlier, and is glad to talk about, not my goal here today, to talk about XBRL's global ledger framework. Not a general ledger, not just transactions, chart of accounts, but being able to represent in a global, holistic, generic way all of the data in the underlying ERP systems to bridge from the original transactions off to the various types of external facing reports. Over the last 10 years, I've been here telling it to you. The great news is that XBRL data is here and it is beginning to proliferate. And that's why we can begin to tell stories about how we can be using different techniques. Today, talking about SQL, the structured query language, to be able to access the information that's out there, access the information within your own organization, your clients' organizations, be able to bring that all together and do some incredible benchmarking stuff. So XBRL data is beginning to proliferate. We saw last year approximately 500 companies under the U.S. SEC's Interactive Data Mandate 33-9002 begin to bring in their data in this XBRL format, taking the old documents, tagging each individual fact and turning that document information into data information. In year two, those 500 companies began to do detailed tagging, and that's where our story is going to begin. This year, 1,200 companies or so began to explore, and as they did their year one style tagging, a little bit more summarized. Next year will be their detail, and then next year, 8,000 more companies will begin doing their filings with the SEC. Now again, this is just the financial statements with the SEC. There are many, many other programs where this kind of data is becoming available and again can be a source for the continuous benchmarking story we're going to talk about. Mutual funds are going to be doing their risk return summaries beginning the beginning of next year. And there's many other sources in the U.S. with the banks, with the FDIC, FFIEC, and then many other regulators taking the information, making it public. And again, just one example, the Magna system of the Israeli Securities Administration. So there's lots of data out there. And what XBRL does is it begins to expose this information as data points. Now, yes, you could have worked with any of the wonderful third parties out there that are the data intermediaries that try and take the information and then normalize it or categorize it. But now we have where companies themselves are saying, this is the story we want to tell. Here is the information about our organization. And as we've reached the second year for those first 500 companies, they've been told that you're going to start to, in a standardized fashion, looking for the mouse, there we go, you're going to talk about your operating activities. You're going to talk about your business segments. You're going to talk about your geographical, the geographical impact of your performance. You're going to expose your major customers. And major customers has been something that's been available in text. And what I'm going to be giving you a vision about today is what happens when we can look at major customers of companies. And we can look at their major customers. And we can look at their major customers. And what happens when we can take this kind of information and on a regular basis begin to exploit for benchmarking purposes, linked segmental reporting. So company A has its dependencies. Those dependencies have their dependencies. They have their dependencies, and they're all reporting new kinds of information in intense detail that we can now bring into our continuous monitoring environment, do analyses, and see what's the impact on our benchmarking. So it's all about the dependencies. And again, you do have this mirror image kind of situation that if you have your major customers, then you can turn that around and say that there's a vendor type of relationship there. You can be trying to figure out who in these big ways is buying from whom and who's selling what to whom. And therefore, again, if company Z or some geographical area is having a problem or some industry is going down, what's the impact? How can these dependencies help your company? How can you exploit them? How can you protect yourself? What does this mean to the external auditor as they're doing their analyses? Because I have no better name, call it the reverse Lorenzian effect or the bad apple effect. Edward Lorenz is, the butterfly effect. You've seen the Ashton Kutcher movie and Jeff Goldblum from Jurassic Park and the chaos theory. And when a butterfly flaps its wings, does that mean that another CEO is going to be indicted? However that goes. So how do we enable this Lorenzian web? And again, just coming up with the example of customers, vendors. I wish that I could show you more from the initial filings. Now in the United States, that kind of detail is in the 10Ks. And again, we have to go with the 10Ks for the second year of the first year filings. So most of that information is going to be coming out with the 1231s as they do their Ks. And so when we look at major customers in the system, and again, this is about SQL access. And so XBureau US, and again, this is not meant to be, I'm not telling you to go and use the products and services that are here, just mean to expose them to you. Not good, not bad. My opinions do not necessarily represent that of my firm, of XBureau International US, of Miklos, or of anyone sane, but we share them anyway. We have a total of 34 types of facts that have been expressed related to major customers. And this is from the C-suite of XBureau US, C-suite, CSUITE.xbureau.us. If you're a member of XBureau US, then you have access to this. If you're an academic member, you have access to this. Otherwise, they'd be glad to talk to you and how much it might cost to make it available to you. So what I did in this particular tool, and underneath this is SQL. So this is Postgres. This is all sorts of wonderful things. And if you're an academic, please see me because they're making the underlying raw data available, and I'll show you a slide of that later. This is just the nice, friendly front end to it so that you don't have to learn the SQL queries. And I said, show me everybody who has reported something related to major customers thus far. And don't worry about not being able to read this very well. We've got all of 34 different examples. And again, that's just not an awful lot. This is just a few different companies that have done this so far. I'm going to show you another one where we have a lot more data to pull from, but we're going to see this grow. And when this grows, we're going to be able to look at the companies. We're going to be able to look at the ones that they're dependent upon. We're going to look at the ones they're dependent upon. We're going to look at the industries they're in. And when we find out about impacts on industries having difficulties, then we can make assessments about what that means. I've got some summary slides here. Looking on some ways on how to best visualize this. I remember in our first group, people spoke about the visualization. Those of you who are here regularly know that I've spoken about quantum reporting and quantum audit, the difference between particles and waves down the rabbit hole and all that. And again, now that we have these filings starting to come in, each one of them acting as a little particle, we also have the wonderful waves that they cause, because in the United States, everyone's not at 1231, which means we have information coming in January, February, March, April, May, by SIC code, by company, and that means that we can start to have these waves coming on. We can be looking at the patterns. We can be looking at the trends. You're not stuck looking at the 1231s. We begin having this wonderful, more fluid way of information coming in, seeing the impact, seeing who's a major customer, seeing, therefore, who's a primary vendor, seeing the industries, and being able to figure out as this information comes in, updating our profile for our benchmarking story. And as I say, in some cases we've got some pretty good information coming in. REITs, the Real Estate Investment Trust, we've got 165 of those filings coming in. Petroleum and gas, 145 filings. Power and utilities, 138 filings. If you're going to be doing this by industry instead of by company, we've already got a pretty good mass where we can start to figure out what's going on here. Again, as I mentioned, certain disclosures are only required on the K on an annual basis, but this offset of filings means that data and trends can be refreshed with each of these filings coming through. And when you have that sufficient population of the data, you can be having that pseudo-continuous type of monitoring process. You'll get an up-to-date picture, however grainy it is, of what's going on. Where can this go as the numbers get bigger, as we have more data sources available? Just as the internet was built on TCP, IP, Transmission Control Protocol, Internet Protocol, that says no matter where there's a problem, you can reroute and find your way around, maybe that's going to enable the business reporting internet as well, as we can get this kind of data, and hopefully we'll be able to deal with the CERC problems with the interdependencies. We'll be working on that as well. Now, we want information to flow continuously. You've heard me speak about frictionless data. You've heard me say that sometimes friction is good. We like controls. We like security. Often the controls and the limits actually make it so that the information can flow more freely, and making things free, like the Wikipedia approaches to everything, means, well, I wonder what would happen if companies' financial statements were wikis. And you probably get some really incredible insights, and you probably get some stuff that you really have to figure out how to throw out. So I'm taking my frictionless data and I'm turning it into aerodynamic data. We want data. We want to get it as quickly as possible. We want to get it from as many sources as possible. We want to be able to bring together external data sources and internal data sources. We want to know when we look at our own data internally, we say, great, our sales are up 100%. Woo! But then we find out, oh, but the sales of our competitors are up 200%. Ooh. We need this kind of information so that we can make the right decisions. And so if we have benchmarking in our Lorenzian web, then we can make all sorts of decisions on the technical point. Hey, this XBRL stuff is pretty new, and there's all sorts of wonderful things going on, and there's folks in this room who are part of various efforts related to audit and assurance and trying to figure out data quality issues, and is it communicating to the market, and are companies getting their story out, and is the market going to benefit from what's being told? And so there's the XBRL specific kind of information, keeping up with the trends. We reported 5,000 facts. Our competitors reported 12,000 facts. Our financials look like they're around the same. What's going on? Here's the approach that they took to do this kind of a disclosure. So benchmarking the very nature of the filings that are going in. But as I said in the prior slide, how does my performance compare with others in my industry, in my geography, in my market? As we look and we see one little company and the little bad apple spoiling the whole bunch, when we see that happening, can we look at that and have that drive our investment strategy? From operations, can we look at things that are starting to fail and say this may impact credit from that region, credit from that industry, credit from that company, and so I need to be on the alert there. Or this is just wonderful opportunities because what did someone say? I think they said that the buzzard doesn't look for the healthy animals its next meal. If we can be looking at places where there are problems going on, we can, I hate to use the word exploit, that has such negative connotations, but we can leverage that as well. And there's money to be made in making decisions before everybody else does, even if they're based on wrong or bad information. What does this require? It requires agreement at an increasingly detailed, granular level. It requires quality in the selection and creation process. And I showed you a little bit about major customers and that there wasn't really a lot of data there. Geographical breakdowns. I did a little essay here, and again, using the SQL capabilities that have been provided both by XBRL US out of their conformance suite and also from other sources. And I began to say, what are people reporting in this area of geographic breakdowns? And so we're seeing a very wide variety, a very broad spread of information. Domestic, okay, domestic. Who's domestic? Presumably it means U.S., not bad. That seems to be our number one geographic breakdown. Worldwide. Okay, does that mean everything in XBRL world, if it's a total, you're not supposed to put in something specific? And so if worldwide means everything, you're supposed to basically say nothing. It's just, by default, it's worldwide. So what is worldwide? Does that mean worldwide other than U.S.? International, again, presumably that means not U.S., but could be wrong. Asia Pacific. Total, you're not supposed to have totals. North American, Latin American. Non-Switzerland and Switzerland. Well, that's an interesting breakdown there. Southeast, Southwest, Northeast, North. Sales of trade accounts receivable from North American member. Interesting breakdown. Geographical intersegment eliminations member. Corporate member. Other member. Wow, there's some really useful things going on here. And what we need to do is we need to be cleaning the stuff here. Again, just going on. Consolidated member, corporate and eliminations member. Now, this is what people reported under their geographic breakdown. So this isn't broad thing. This is what they reported geographically. Foreign currency translation euros member. Great geographic breakdown. Impairment of goodwill member. Okay, I'm not sure. I guess in some world, goodwill may be a geography. Luxury residential processes, reconciling items, total from operations, tariffs generated by Spain. So again, speaking of frictionless, we need to move from frictionless to aerodynamic. When you start up from rest on a frictionless service, it's not necessarily intuitive. By the way, does anyone know if you're on a frictionless service and you're completely at rest, how do you get yourself going based on Newton's third law? If you have a heavy jacket, you just sort of throw it in one direction, you move the other because of conservation of mass. So until you start, you don't know where you're going anyway. So I can see that based on the fact we want to make sure that we eat. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to speak really briefly on just a little bit of technical, make sure that we have a minute or two for questions. And if anyone wants to see anything more on the XBRL US Consistency Suite, on Fujitsu X1, which is one tool for doing SQL queries within an instance document itself, or other tools, I'll be glad to show those to you during the break. So there's lots of ways. Again, if there's XBRL, what are some things we might like to do? We like to view it, audit it, and analyze it, transform, and I, of course, like to move it. What kind of tooling is available? The SEC itself has provided viewing tools. It has nothing to do with SQL, but it makes it so that you can look at the stuff, go to the SEC's website. They provide open source rendering. You can incorporate that into your own apps. You can query with SQL, as we're going to talk about, or use XQuery for the native XML. Those of you who are in our mailing list know that there's semantic web enthusiasts who say we need to use something called Sparkle, and there's lots of other ways of doing it. So if you go to the SEC's website, you can download their rendering engine. You have to have some minor knowledge of XSLT, MS-DOS, Saxon text handling, and if you can do that, then you've got a great free tool. There's some good tools that are available that build things into Excel. So if you are an academic, for example, and you're trying to bring some use to your classes, you may want to talk to the folks at Edgar Online or at Hitachi. Very similar types of tools that can take XBRL data, bring it in and show it either in the presentation that's offered by the taxonomy vendors themselves, or providing style sheets. Style sheet view means that you can set up the different views, access the data, analyze it however you want using the power of Excel-based formulas. So just standard views or templates. My firm has something called IDP, our data platform that we use for our benchmarking internally. And so we have a wide series of templates that we use as part of our due diligence using this tool. Now, the XBRL guy saying that SQL is a standard, I know that may be the old pot calling the kettle something it ought not. SQL is a standard from 1986, but like every other standard, the good news is that there's so many of them, and so there are many variants. There's some tools if you're going to be accessing the XBRL US database. Recommend the PG Admin 3, and if you have that, then you get to learn a brand new language. So there will be a short quiz on this next period. And I was working on, this being a good academic conference, I was going to do things with integrals and summations from 1 to infinities and dv to t's and select star from, and then things in brackets, because, again, this is all about nesting. I want to be able to find those major customers of major customers of major customers of major customers. So I was going to 1 to infinity find your major customer, but I ran out of time. And again, I will be glad to demonstrate. It's all about the data sources, and I've got a picture here somewhere. Here we go. Here's the, we looked at the nice covering over the XBRL US consistency suite. Here it is under the covers. There's a whole bunch of tables. There's a bunch of views set up. You get to start learning how to write these, select this from that in these situations and these causes, order them in these directions. And again, please see me if you've got some interest in being able to access this information. Incredible amount of information already there. And as I say, as the numbers grow, give us the 1231Ks, and you're going to just see a treasure trove of information to begin to analyze and analyze and analyze. If we specialize things for XBRL, then you can use that approach of Fujitsu. And again, Fujitsu, if you're doing projects with your class related to single instance documents right now, and you can do a little bit of SQL with them. The Fujitsu X1 has a freely licensed version for academic and consortium use. And please see me if you need the URL. When you have this, there's this little box. Those of you who played with X1 in the past may have seen. It says the query table. And what you have is a little white box with these words on the side and no instructions whatsoever on how to use it. And, they say that is anyone in the room a programmer? Before I say anything. Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say the programmers are very neat, tidy folks who don't like to leave messes around like documentation. And so underneath, and I've been working with Fujitsu, we're working on getting the documentation available because the power of the X1 to analyze your instances or any other instance is in this little white box. Because when you learn, select the element and the element data type from the grouping of concepts that are the taxonomy rather than the facts of the instance, where the element type name contains string and the element prefix is a local company and the element isn't an abstract and it isn't an axis, and all of a sudden that you find out that people are doing really interesting things with data types. And I know my time is way gone here, and I'm really sorry about that. So the opportunities to begin working with XBRL data here are growing massively. And we have that question, then what can you do with aerodynamic data? What can you uncover that might indicate someone else's future actions or state upon which you can capitalize? Not sure why I put the enemy of my enemy as my friend, but I guess it has something to do with those interdependencies. The vulture doesn't look to the healthy animal as its next meal, and efficiencies often come at the cost of compromise. These are some of the things that we've learned so far. Glad to talk to anybody at breaks. Try the veal, compliment your chef, and tip the waitress. Thank you.